The Sun, Lord of Mysteries Chapter 26-30. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Chapter 26 Hermit Uniqueness. There was a huge black door that looked like a slate in the endless white space, with a being made of pure information floating in front of it. The being is none other than the artificial life or the future hidden sage, that was still being formed. The hidden sage was transparent, and inside him was a purple book with an eye within a triangle symbol in the middle of the cover. The book was fading and slowly blending with hidden sage. The purple book was the uniqueness of Hermit. 3 figures stood in front of it, each with a different expression and complexion, but they all just stood there in silence, with no intention of moving forward. Finally, the woman among them broke the silence. "We really made it through that." With a sigh, Lilith said. "I never thought I'd say this after becoming God, a being who oversaw the entire world, but when she arrived before us, I felt so small in comparison to her, and I felt fear and dread." She didn't hide her fear. She faced and embraced her fear, because only that made her understand her own mortality and weakness more than ever. She was a pillar of the cosmos, her true power vastly outranks us, and truth be told, we only survived due to circumstances and the assistance of others. Ocuses remarked wryly. It was such a close call at the time, and everything could have very well been destroyed. If he ever faced her true body, she would only need to use that blood ocean, and all of his authority would be corrupted by it immediately. And things would have been much worse in the beginning if he hadn't been there. Lilith would have been corrupted almost instantly. He couldn't imagine about future at that time. Everything he had built would have been destroyed, and he himself might have died. This simply made him feel powerless in the face of the vast cosmos, and it reminded that he still has a long way to go. It also mainly made him realize his own mortality. He could also die, despite being God above all. He also experienced rollercoaster of emotions during this fight than ever before, and he should really take a vacation to Byam and drink traditional tea there, to give himself a break. Was she a pillar? Artisan spoke in a low tone. And is she the one on the moon? This entire journey was extremely impactful for Artisan. The experience and memories of this time will certainly remain with him for the rest of his life and haunt him in his nightmares. Especially when she appeared, he felt pure terror and oppression. He never, ever wanted to go through something like that again. And, just by looking at her, a lot of knowledge poured into his mind, revealing who she was. Artisan knew what a pillar was because Adam had been kind enough to tell him about it before. He knew there was a pillar in the Crimson Moon, but it was still a huge shock to him that he actually participated in the fight against her, and to top it all that, he still survived. To be honest, everything felt like a dream, no, a nightmare to him. He was still perplexed by everything that had happened. She was a pillar created by the original creator. Ocuses responded, but his gaze was drawn to the black door. However, she lost her status and became no different from the other outer gods. But she is still the most powerful of them all. How did she lose her status as a pillar? Lilith inquired, somewhat agitatedly. She, too, was listening in before. She felt this might shed light on many events that were previously in dark to her, such as what happened to the ruined past civilization in her origin. Ocuses, on the other hand, simply smiled and dodged her question. Forget about her. To be honest, I've had enough of her, and thinking about it makes me somewhat sick. He said this with a slight disgust. He fought with Mother Goddess of Depravity almost the entire fight. And he'd seen a lot that shouldn't have been seen, especially in Layer Abyss, where literally everything was reproducing, mating, and giving birth to abominations that should never have come to light of day. So much so, that he felt compelled to pour holy water from his church over his eyes, to purify him. Lilith didn't ask any further questions, but she fixed her gaze on Ocuses, who seemed unfazed by her scrutiny. That weapon. To break the silence, Artisan finally asked something. Do you like it? Ocuses was amused, and the sword of rupture appeared in his hand, still with some cracks on it, causing him to frown. Indeed, yes, Artisan acknowledged. It is the most powerful weapon I have ever seen. The design is strange, Lilith remarked as she looked at it. Can you tell me what kind of weapon it is? It can be considered a sword, Ocuses replied first, then turned to Artisan, and continued. Despite what it has accomplished, it is still not the most powerful weapon on the planet. Then, he interrupted them, who wanted to speak up. Now, Ocuses spoke lightly while walking forward. First and foremost, we must deal with the situation at hand and get the hell out of here. His tone changed. I really need to get some fresh air. He also put away the sword of rupture. They were even talking freely now, only because the Serfoit power that had passed into reality was almost gone after what happened. Except for the residual pollution, which they must still seal, but there is no longer any danger, at least for them. They finally focused on the door in front of them, which had a strange mural on it. Image here. Ocuses narrowed his eyes at the mural, which resembled an illustration of the Tree of Life Kabbalah from his previous life. Isn't this just a projection of the entrance? Lilith inquired. The Sephiroth would have been right there behind the door. It would have been accessible previously. Ocuses spoke while raising his hand and drawing a sun symbol on the air as if it were a piece of paper. He also put away the thoughts of resemblance that he noticed and focused on the current situation. As he finished it, the symbol began to glow, while the surrounding white space became illusory and began to fade, revealing a library. Seal. He said this as the sun symbol flew towards the door and instantly fused with the black door, causing it to rumble as if it wanted to break free from that symbol. But its resistance faded as the sun symbol appeared gradually on the surface and golden lines began to spread across the door, completely sealing it. At the same time, the white space faded completely, and they found themselves at the far end of a large library, with the door in front of them. Lilith was already in front of the artificial life, when she touched it, and the entire being of the artificial life became illusory and faded away, as if it had been erased from existence. Now, Hidden Sage died completely at Lilith's hands before it could even gain consciousness. Lilith took the purple book and the two characteristics that fell out and examined them for a moment. Then, without hesitation, threw them to Ocuses. Artisan only gave a complex look as he watched the uniqueness and characteristics fall into the hands of the sun god, but he didn't speak up to say anything. Even though he has gained significant power and knowledge during this experience, he is not foolish to challenge a god who has fought a pillar alone for a long time. Finally, Ocuses sighed and looked at the hermit uniqueness and the two knowledge emperor characteristics for which he had come. Actually, throughout the fight, he somehow managed to forget about them, until being reminded after the end of the fight. No one below the rank of King of Angels may enter this place. Using his authority, he declared. Even though it is sealed, the pollution of Sephiroth here is still very dangerous to those below the King of Angels. All right, let's go, he finally said, as their figures vanished from Moses's ascetic order. As the sun rose, the light of dawn shone through the horizon, illuminating the vast desert on which three figures appeared out of nowhere. Ocuses, Lilith, and Artisan immediately felt divine gazes focusing on them from all over the world. The light of sun in the surroundings then dimmed slightly as a woman in a dark gown appeared. She was none other than Amanines, the first to arrive here, or should he say, the only one who had the courage to come and check, among the gods. Amanines looked at Lilith with obvious concern in her eyes, which were hidden behind the black gauze. Everything is fine, Lilith smiled, a hint of relief visible on her face. We also defeated her. Ocuses didn't hesitate to add, and he immediately felt a range of emotions from the gazes directed at them. He felt shock, complexity, relief, and even a tinge of fear. Then, I will take my leave, Ocuses stated, for he didn't want to stay here anymore, under all of their gazes, and he also needed some alone time. Under the light of the rising sun, his figure collapsed into golden light particles. Chapter 27 Aftermath. After 2 weeks, the rising sun cast a golden glow across the sky, illuminating the world below. The world, which was always in turmoil due to war and strife, has been unusually calm over the last week. Conflicts and wars around the world have ceased without any warning, causing widespread confusion among the populace. But, this was just an afterthought of many, as more were preoccupied with dealing with the aftermath of the disaster that swept the world with the appearance of the Blood Moon. As the Blood Moon's power seeped into the world through the barrier, the spiritual world interacted with the material world. Various unspeakable abominations and evil spirits ravaged the land on that crimson night, bringing destruction and death. It wouldn't be wrong to say that the blood of those fallen flowed into rivers across the continent under the illumination of the Blood Moon. On that crimson night, almost all of the church combat force of gods was dispatched, and angels and saints who were always aloof and indifferent to worldly matters could be seen dealing with the disaster. If this level of disaster occurred in the fifth epoch, almost everything would have been destroyed, unless the gods themselves intervened. However, this was the age of gods, when gods walked the earth and the extraordinary was not hidden from the general populace. Most importantly, the number of Beyonders worldwide vastly outnumbers the future. To be more specific, the main combat force of any church army is demigods, not middle or low sequence Beyonders. So, despite the fact that the disaster was catastrophic, it was eventually dealt with by the combined might of all. When everyone expected the wars to continue, it did not, instead restoring the long-awaited peace on the land that many had not seen since the Third Epoch. But those who were knowledgeable and experienced among the Beyonders had a feeling that this was nothing more than false peace before the storm that would sweep the world. In a vast river that flowed between mountain peaks, two figures stood around a roaring black knight wielding a sword that appeared to be made of red fire. Dark clouds obscured the sky above, with flashes of scarlet lighting. The Black Knight was dressed in full-body armor and a helmet visor over its head, which only showed two red eyes. The knight was bound under the whip that seemed to be made out of the starlight itself, while he was letting out a hoarse roar in madness, as he gazed at the two figures that were trying to kill him. "What the hell happened, Lucas?" A woman in a traditional blue robe with rimmed glasses on her eyes spoke loudly as she looked at the man in front of her, who appeared to be hesitant. "Instead of hesitating, simply throw the light spear again and try to purify it. I won't be able to keep it up for long. It's pointless, Diana." The man with blonde hair spoke helplessly. Despite being dead and transformed into an evil spirit, it seemed to have endless vitality. "My power can only weaken it, not purify it. I propose that we pray to the Lord." Finally, the blonde-haired man proposed. "This is just a remnant evil spirit of an angel," Diana exclaimed as soon as she heard his suggestion. "We too can handle it." Crack! The whip that was holding the knight down began to break down as crimson blood began to pour out of the cracks in the evil spirit's armor, falling the whip and immediately melting it. When Lucas noticed this, he did not hesitate to throw the spear at the Black Knight. That crimson blood! Diana's pupils constricted as she stared at the crimson blood. It should have been influenced by the blood moon and mutated. She guessed right away. This is a very rare situation, even during this time, because the blood moon caused the disaster to sweep the world and increased the power of spirits under its illumination, but after the blood moon disappeared, this advantage was lost. However, this night appears to be unique. The Black Knight appeared not long ago, after everything had calmed down. It caused massive damage in short of time and it was so powerful that they both had to come forward and besiege it right away. Diana intended to use the mystical reenactment to join the attack on it. Boom, boom, boom. But then a cluster of scarlet lightning bolts descended towards her from the sky, with such force that the mountain around them collapsed as it fell. Diana saw the Black Knight looking at her with those red eyes visible through the mask, and she could feel the spirit's rage and madness, which seemed completely focused on dealing with her, as if to exact revenge for what it had suffered. So much so that the evil spirit ignored the light spear that was heading towards it, but a blaze of flames surrounded it, completely blocking the light spear. Diana didn't waste any time and immediately used the mystical reenactment. A golden shield appeared in her hand, with a golden sun emblem in the center that shone brightly. She immediately shielded herself from the crimson lightning that was falling on her. "God says it's effective," Lucas declared, pointing to Diana. Under his words, the sun emblem on Diana's shield blazed with blinding light. At the time, the entire shield was strengthened. However, just then, a divine aura descended on this location, causing the crimson lighting to stop and vanish, as if it had faded away from existence. The dark clouds then dispersed from the sky, allowing the golden sun to shine through. Ocuses stood in the light of the sun, his hands clasped on the helmet of the Black Knight and lifting the evil spirit from the ground. "I remember you." With a chuckle, he said. "You were the war angel under Farubati who died under my sword." He took a brief pause, as if recalling something, before continuing with a smile. "Now, as I recall, I caught you and threw you into the dungeons, and ordered that you to be tortured. Later, I honestly forgot about you." Ocuses hated the entire race of devils, so much so, that he didn't hesitate to wage war on Farubati in the Third Epoch. "It appears that you did quite well after your death. Even grew stronger unintentionally as a result of her." He smiled as he continued. "So, why were you here? To exact vengeance on me. There is one more thing he despises now, and that is, her. If he becomes God Almighty in the future, he will especially to go to meet her in the Crimson Moon." Ocuses looked at the Black Knight, and his grip on its visor tightened, causing cracks in it. He saw only fear in the evil spirit's mad eyes as it looked at him. Actually, it indeed had a great deal of hatred for him, and even though it has become an evil spirit, the fact that it was an angel before its fall is more than enough for it to retain some of its consciousness. However, the hatred and blood moon blinded and affected whatever was left, allowing it to attack his country without fear. But, now that it was surrounded by his divine aura, the evil spirit regained some of its consciousness. "Please." A painful voice came from behind the Black Knight's visor. "To be honest, I don't care what you're going to say." Ocuses spoke indifferently as his smile faded and he also noticed the red eyes of the Black Knight widening, which seemed to be filled with despair. "It will make no difference to your fate. Golden flames erupted from his hands and engulfed the Black Knight's figure. The evil spirit didn't even have a chance to scream in agony before it was completely turned into ashes, and even its soul was destroyed under the burning of his golden flames. Chapter 28 Cards of Blasphemy. The capital, Kingdom of Elias. The magnificent city was shrouded in a depressing atmosphere, as the majority of people walked around in black clothes, most of them heading towards the cemetery. Cries and sobs could be heard from everywhere, as some relatives clutched a photograph of their loved one tightly in their hands. While some ladies exiting the carriage in black gowns were dazed and their eyes dimmed, as if they couldn't accept the harsh reality. The church bells ringing and echoing around the city were the only thing that managed to pull them out of their states and make them continue on with their lives, as this gave them a faint sense of support, for they remembered their faith. They hoped that their loved ones would find eternal rest in God's kingdom. In a lavish restaurant in the city's central square, a waitress was carrying a plate of 3 glasses of wine while walking. She finally came to a halt in front of the last table in the row, which had 3 unusual guests. "Your drinks are ready, sir." The waitress placed the drinks in front of the gentleman who had ordered first, followed by others. "Would you like to order some food?" Then she inquired. "Is there something wrong with the service?" she asked, as she noticed the strange expressions of the 2 people who accompanied the gentleman. "We traveled a long way to get here. So, you know." The gentleman in the black tuxedo spoke in their stead, smiling and trailing off at the end. "I understand." The waitress gave a nod. "Do you want to exchange with refreshments instead?" "It's all right." The lady with gold-rimmed glasses over her eyes spoke up, and the blonde-haired man next to her nodded in agreement. "We'll place our order later," the gentleman finally said. Then, she nodded and left them alone. They were none other than Ocuses, Lucas, and Diana, who decided to go around the city after the situation with the evil spirit was resolved, on the suggestions of Ocuses. They toured the city, even visiting a cemetery, the ruins caused by the disaster, and even cathedral, led by Ocuses. To be honest, it was too strange for Lucas and Diana to go to the cathedral where the mass about their Lord was taking place, with their Lord with them. They were aware, however, that their Lord was simply inspecting the damage and loss caused by the disaster. They didn't understand, though, why they had to go there and see everything when their Lord could just use his authority. "Drink it," Ocuses said as he noticed them still in a daze. They nodded and started drinking their wine. Both were thinking the same thing in their heads. Lord has really gained more humanity. Diana was astounded when she realized this. Because her perception of gods had been refreshed as she traveled with her Lord. She could see a distinct change in her Lord now, and she can even clearly sense her Lord's humanity, for her Lord didn't bother to even hide it. While Lucas had previously guessed it, but he has now personally confirmed it. "Lord, the blood moon." Lucas finally asked the most important question for which they needed an answer. The entire incident was disastrous, and he and Diana were frequently called upon to deal with it. It was a real pain for them without the other 2, Angel of Temperance and Angel of Miracles, where one situation was not so good and the other was still within the Solomon Empire. The sudden appearance of the blood moon stunned them, because the blood moon had not appeared on the world since the fall of the ancestor of the blood race. They also knew that when the blood moon appeared, various gods took action. For a brief moment, they believed an all-out gods' war had erupted. They had previously prayed to their Lord about this, but he had not responded specifically to them. Diana put down the wine and focused, but she had a feeling it had something to do with a previous incident that had happened to her. She also intended to inquire about it later. That Ocuses, who was enjoying his wine, paused when he heard the question. He finally put down his glass and said, "When the time comes, you'll know. It is not yet safe for you." He was just making an excuse because he didn't want to talk about this. Ocuses had his own time alone for 2 weeks, during which he rested. He was also constantly double-checking himself because he was overly cautious, due to fact, he was facing a once pillar with many methods that humans cannot comprehend. He was fine in the end, but his alone time wasn't without incident. Because of what happened during the blood moon, the prayers and cries of angels and others poured into his mind. And, the number of souls entering his kingdom increased exponentially, forcing him to concentrate on the situation at hand. To be honest, he didn't think the situation would reach this level on a global scale at first. But, this huge disaster didn't cause any waves in his heart in the least. He did, however, visit some of the affected areas to assess the situation firsthand and how much it affected his kingdom. Then he repeatedly blessed Lucas, Diana, and some saints from his church in order to assist them. This is also when he became aware of the situation with the Black Knight. "Is there any other significant news?" Ocuses interrogated them, who still wanted to ask more. Diana and Lucas were a little disappointed because, despite everything, they still didn't get the answer for their lord. "This is the most recent news, my lord." Nonetheless, Diana responded, taking the newspaper from the very space that rippled as she did so. Ocuses sighed as he read the newspaper and saw how the history had changed at the moment. The greatest invention of the epoch, steam engine. It was boldly stated in the headlines. He wasn't surprised, he knew Artisan could do it after receiving all of the knowledge. Artisan's titles weren't just there as a joke. He was truly a most talented amongst of all. And, because of this, the entire fourth epoch will undergo a significant shift. "I can't believe I'll be witnessing the Industrial Revolution so soon." Ocuses thought with some complexity, however, he pushed away these thoughts. Then he took out a brown book and began to carry out his first plan, which he still remembers. He pushed the newspaper aside and opened the book, much to Diana and Lucas's surprise. Ocuses finally came to a halt in the pages where the entire sequence of Hermit Pathway was present. It's the same book where he previously gathered all of knowledge, when he went to save Diana. He used his authority of order, while pressing his index finger on the writings in the book. The power of knowledge in the book is far from ordinary, because it contains the entire path of God and it directly came from the uniqueness itself. The information emerged from the book and quickly became corporeal. Then, under his authority, they gathered and morphed together. It eventually formed a card, which floated in front of them. The card depicted an elderly man standing alone on the summit of a mountain, holding a lantern in his right hand and a long staff in his left. The Hermit. Ocuses snatched the card from the air and slid it across the table to Diana. "This is the card of blasphemy." Chapter 29 Tarot Cards. Diana held the card in her hand as various pieces of information appeared in her mind. Sequence 9, Mystery Prior. Sequence 8, Melee Scholar. Sequence 1, Knowledge Emperor. Sequence 0 Hermit. She couldn't believe she was holding the entire path of God that so many had earned to know, for some would give anything to obtain this knowledge. Yet here she was, holding it in the heat of the moment, without even expecting it in the least. Now, her faith in her Lord and fate itself had never been higher than it was now. "Does it have the entire path of God?" Lucas inquired, his gaze never leaving the card in his hand. He was well aware of what blasphemy represented, and the card was something that their Lord had created himself, so he can easily guess what it might be. Ocuses, on the other hand, was just watching them from the sidelines, enjoying his wine. "Yes, the Hermit," Diana responded, while she also found a lot of the depiction of the old man in the card to be far from simple, and it somewhat correlates with the essence of the Hermit Pathway itself. She truly felt her Lord's might once more. Everything he does has a very deep meaning. She then passed the card to Lucas, whose gaze was literally too hot on the card, as she could feel the surrounding temperature rise. Lucas immediately accepted the card and fell into a trance as he digested the full path of God for the first time. Meanwhile, Diana's mind kept repeating the knowledge of the promotion ritual and formula. She was also wondering if she had a chance, even if it was slim. She has desire to advance further in order to become stronger, because she had a terrible feeling about future from the knowledge given by her idol, the mysteries of the Black Door, the blood moon and calamity that followed. This notion was strengthened when she saw her Lord giving her this without even batting an eye, and she even had a hunch. Her Lord hasn't finished, he might even take out something else, which could be the very thing she always wanted and requested from her Lord, by doing a lot of tasks and raising a lot of contribution. Her Lord, on the other hand, was anything but generous. He can be very strict and expects a lot from others in return if they want anything from him. She knew there was more to this than meets the eye. "This card, my Lord." Diana finally said something. "Do you find anything special in the image of card?" interpreted Ocuses, while placing the cup below in the table. "Yes." Diana nodded and said as she felt her Lord's inquiring gaze. "The card has a lot in common with the essence of the Hermit. The old man is alone on his path of knowledge, and the lamp he holds only illuminates his front and not the entire path, indicating that he must proceed to see what lies ahead, knowing that not everything will be revealed at once." Ocuses gave her an appreciative look before talking something out of nowhere and setting it on the table. He no longer bothered and simply handed it to her. For the next war, some powerful archangels will be required to at least make a stand against the forces of True Creator and Solomon while they deal with them. Diana is the perfect fit right now at the moment, which correlated with his plan. There were two things on the table, the characteristics of the Knowledge Emperor and a deck of cards. A silence descended as soon as he placed those things. Diana stared at the characteristics in the table, her mind blank. Even though she had anticipated it, seeing it in person had a profound effect on her. As it stands in this day and age, being promoted to angel is the best one can hope for, and the chances of being promoted to archangel in a path with no god are so slim that they can be dismissed entirely. Almost all of the remaining paths have archangels in place, or sequence 1 characteristics are already in the hands of gods and king of angels. So, unless someone is blessed by fate, one can imagine the chances are too low. Diana was aware that her path lacked archangels, but the characteristics of the Knowledge Emperor were already in the hands of the king of angels and gods. Even though, she requested a lot to her lord about this. She didn't have much hope, because anything involving the gods and the king of angels is bound to become complicated. Just like what happened with her idol before. Diana almost jumped out of her seat when she remembered. The hermit uniqueness. Did the Lord get it? The Knowledge Emperor here should be the one that was owned by her idol and the Lord has it now, so there is a good chance that the uniqueness. As soon as she thought of this, her heart leapt with joy. Nonetheless, she managed to resist the urge to inquire. She was well aware that nothing in this world was free, and her Lord was far from generous. Diana. Ocuses called out as she noticed her dazed state, and her eyes never left the characteristics. Was it too much of a shocker for her? Lord, this. Diana strutted, trying to organize herself, after jolting out of her daze. Take it, Diana. Ocuses said this in between sips of wine. You need to be promoted because I will be assigning you to face a formidable foe in the coming chaos. He concluded with a smile. There it is. Diana was well aware that whoever she was about to face would be anything but ordinary, and could even be fatal to her. But she knew that this was the only chance that she could advance in her path. She didn't show hesitation because she knew her lord would be disappointed in her because this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that many wouldn't even get. Thank you very much, my lord. Diana said after she had calmed down. I will face whoever you ask. She said it with confidence, despite having very bad feeling afterwards. Then, almost immediately, she took the Knowledge Emperor characteristics from the table and placed them in her separate space. She also noticed a deck of cards on the table, which she had previously overlooked subconsciously. Ocuses simply chuckled as he noticed this and turned to see the dejected eyes of Lucas, who was still starting at the place where the characteristics was. You, too, Lucas, will get your chance in the future. He said lightly, leaving Lucas perplexed, because almost every pathway interchangeable with the sun pathway already has gods. Ocuses wasn't joking when he said that. With the addition of hermit uniqueness, which he can use, his overall strength has increased significantly. Just like Amonines, she holds the moon uniqueness, which is what made her much stronger than other gods. Then, let's move on to the final thing. Ocuses said, as he ignored the expressions of Lucas and Diana, after hearing that. He took the deck of cards on the table and spread it all in the table. There were total number of 22 cards with Roman number on top of each of card and unique image related to its name in the below. The beginning of the cards was the 0, the Fool, and the ending was the 21, the World. The Tarot cards. Chapter 30 Ritual. The Fool, the Sun, the Death. Lucas examined the various images and names on the cards on the table. The cards, no matter how closely examined, gave off the impression that they were nothing more than ordinary cards. They didn't give the divine and mysteries aura like the previous card of blasphemy. However, the eerie similarities that this card has with sequence pathways, for some of the names of the cards, such as the Fool, directly states the sequence 0 names. This alone caused Lucas's thoughts to wander, as if he could already see his lord's grand plan, which may even cause the world to change. The Hermit. Diana immediately focused on the card that was within 22 among them and then looked at the others. The Fool, the Sun, the Death, the Hanged Man, the Moon. The Emperor should be related to the Black Emperor. And the Wheel of Fortune is self-evident. Temperance ought to be the chained pathway, and the Judgment should be the Justiciar. These cards should be closely related to all of the pathways. Why is the Fool at the start? Is there anything unique about the Fool? Each of these cards also contains a deep mysticism reference. Diana's mind was racing with questions and thoughts as she stared at the cards. The more she looked, the more she realized how significant this was. Ordinary people may think the cards are insignificant, but in her eyes, they are priceless treasure. The Hermit card was a card of blasphemy, so these cards as well. As she looked at the cards, a terrifying thought passed her mind. These are not the cards of blasphemy. Ocuses chuckled, exposing their innermost thoughts as if he could see right through them. Diana and Lucas were slightly disappointed, because they expected their lord to orchestrate the grand plan that would shake the world itself. Their imagination is truly amazing. Ocuses found it amusing to see through their guesses. He wasn't going to do what Russell did and spread the cards of blasphemy for destined people. This would have disastrous consequences. He was almost certain that in the original timeline, Ricel became the enemy of all the gods simply by doing this. It makes no difference whether it was intended or not. Have you considered which knowledge you will spread for the ritual? Without revealing what the cards were, Ocuses asked Diana. My lord, I am considering it, and I'm pretty sure I'd go with the second epic. Diana responded, as she had given much thought about the ritual. However, she is unsure which knowledge would be ideal and acceptable to the rest of the world. Ritual, spread the most abstract and diverse knowledge from the forgotten era and let it be known around the world. You should be aware of this and proceed with caution, right? Ocuses said this with a serious expression. I don't want gods knocking on my door. Nothing about the second epic can be revealed to the public in this way. To top it all off, her ritual's knowledge requirements should be abstract and diverse. This kind of knowledge was plentiful in the second epic, and it could also easily cause an ordinary person to pollute it. That's why I'm still undecided, my lord, and I was planning to seek your advice. Diana nodded solemnly, knowing that if she was not careful with her ritual, it could very well lead to her demise. Even her lord would be powerless to save her. Ocuses was not surprised by her predicament. After all, strict requirements are what have kept archangels from being born in the hermit pathway until now, and not everyone is Ricel, who has knowledge of past civilization, so he didn't have to worry about this ritual in the least. Spread this. Ocuses finally revealed his true intentions with a smile. These are referred to as tarot cards. These meet all of your ritual's requirements. He pointed the tarot cards in the table. Then, Diana took the Fool card in her hand, and a flood of information about its meaning and mysticism appeared in her mind. She knew this satisfied one of the requirements, but there was still one more. My lord, Diana wanted to ask some additional questions about this. This will satisfy all requirements. You have nothing to be concerned about. Ocuses said it again, seeing her concern. The significance of the tarot cards clearly fulfills the requirements of this ritual. Thank you very much, my lord. Diana accepted this with deep gratitude, knowing her lord would not put her in danger. Despite once again having the impression that this cards and her lord's motives were anything but simple. Ocuses' intentions were not obvious simple, he is far from being generous either. He was using Diana's ritual to hide his true intention from being known by other gods. This was an experiment to strengthen his control on the hermit's uniqueness. Even though he could use it, there are still a number of issues. He really wanted to strengthen his power in order to prepare for the future. He devised this method after witnessing hermit's authority over occultism. Even though the tarot cards on the table appear to be normal, they are not. He personally created those with the uniqueness, and if the tarot cards are speared now, they will be completely related to him under the authority of occultism. As tarot cards gained popularity around the world in field of occultism, this will have an impact on the authority, potentially increasing his control as well. Ocuses could only hope that his plan would succeed. Also, the tarot cards from a previous era being introduced by his angel will not reveal his secrets. As tarot cards were not first introduced by Ricel after the cataclysm, but by ancient sun god. Yes, the ancient sun god had a habit of generously imparting past civilizations' knowledge to those close to him, but he never intended to impart all of it to mankind. He and the other kings of angels had done a lot of tarot divination with Ouroboros. Ouroboros also most likely still has the tarot cards given to him by the creator. How about them, my lord? Lucas inquired with concern, when he noticed that this topic had concluded. Are they fine? He was referring to the angel of miracles and temperance. He's all right, Ocuses responded. My messenger prayed to me in the midst of the chaos, he will return soon enough. As for the other, things are still complicated. His voice trailed off as he considered the situation of the angel of temperance. This immediately made Diana and Lucas's hearts sink, as the angel of temperance's condition had deteriorated the last time they had met him. They've been together for a long time and have been through a lot. As they learned of his condition before, it caused them felt loss and pain. Don't worry, his situation hasn't gotten that bad yet. Ocuses sighed, for he once again felt powerless, as even he couldn't solve his angel of temperance problem right now. It's yet another bitch from the cosmos. While drinking his wine, he thought with slight frustration. But, at the very least, his words made those two feel better. Let's order, shall we? Ocuses finally put his thoughts about his angel and cosmos aside and said with a smile, to lighten the depressing atmosphere. It's on me. Diana and Lucas finally smiled as a result of his words. They went on in the light of the sun that shone through the window illuminating their figures.